From activism to entertainment, health to nightlife, profiles in courage to travel, and so much more. This is the Jeff Hocker Show, LGBTQ news and lifestyle conversation for the Coachella Valley region. Here's Jeff Hocker.
Hello, everyone. We've got an engaging show today. Coming up to the microphone now is Alan Carvalho. He is a Cathedral City resident and community activist, former chair of the Public Arts Commission, co-founder of the Coachella Valley Historical Preservationist Committee, and founder of Cathedral City Archivist Group. He is also the creator of promotional videos. His company is Cambridge Video. Welcome, Alan Carvalho.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing great. And you're also, I should just say, the man about town in Cathedral City. You know about everything.
Oh, thank you. Well, I wasn't intending any of this to happen. When my husband and I full-time moved out to Cathedral City from Boston, 10 years ago, we were just coming here to retire, great place to settle, where the winters are wonderful and of course the summers are deadly. But it was okay with us because that's what we decided on. We never dreamed that my husband would actually, a year after moving here, a couple of years after moving here full time, that he'd be running for city council and winning and served for 4 years. And then I decided...
We need him back on the council.
Yeah, we really do need him back. And when he become very involved, I thought, well, gee, I have to do something for the city as well, because when we moved here, I saw the potential, and I realized being a videographer, I could certainly provide my services, donating my services to the city, because a lot of activities were happening, but nobody knew about them. And, you're part of your promotional group, your production company, where if people don't know what's going on, the attendance is not going to be where it should be. So I took it upon myself to start taking photographs and videos. I didn't ask anybody if I should. I just started posting them everywhere. And the next thing I knew, the mayor of Cathedral City decided the state of the city, which is normally a mayoral obligation, he did not want that obligation to be just his. He wanted the entire council to be represented. So he asked me to create a video where I would interview each of the city council members to discuss economic development, growth, all sorts of things happening in the city. And I was thrilled that he obviously liked my videos enough to ask me to do it. So that was kind of how it started. And then
And you're referring to Greg Pettis?
Actually, at the time, it was Stan Henry.
Okay.
Greg became mayor towards the end, but it was Stan Henry who was the mayor at the time back in 2014 when Shelley Kaplan was elected in office. And it was a really amazing time those 4 years. We had three LGBTQ progressive members of the council, and incredible growth happened in our city. We brought cannabis into the city. We had 40 new restaurants come into the city. We started doing events with Chris Parman, and of course your production company helped with that. I mean, it was truly and remains a vital time of our city, and I was very thrilled to be part of that history.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a minute. So the city council back in 2013 voted against cannabis. At what point did that come back up and was voted for cannabis? Because now Cathedral City is one of the hot spots for cultivation as well as having collectives.
Well, what happened was that there were a couple of members of the council that were very, very conservative thinking and were concerned that marijuana would be a gateway drug to worse. Of course, it's reefer madness. And we, Shelley and myself, decided this is an economic opportunity that we cannot miss. Palm Springs was already cultivating and utilizing cannabis as a means of growth. Why shouldn't we do it as well? So we started a petition. We went to the city clerk and said, we want to start a petition to put it on the ballot. Well, we approached council and said, we are doing this to make you aware of the fact that we don't really want it to be up to the voters. We think it's more effective if council takes the initiative to bring cannabis in, and they eventually changed their mind. And then when in 2014, when my husband was brought in with Greg Pettis and John Aguilar, the three of them brought it forward, and the rest is history. It started out as a threat, which the intent was for us to not actually put it on the ballot.
Right. Well, and I think cannabis, and because there's so many stores, helped Cathedral City through the COVID shutdowns.
Well, there was the 2014-2013 Renaissance. I call it the Renaissance Council. They brought in $21 million in rainy day fund because of the cannabis that was brought in. I mean, not only did they bring in cannabis, but the council was smart enough to hire the lawyers that were helpful in Denver. Because they had such a successful cannabis industry there, it was wise for the council to hire those experts to come into our city and help the city do it right. The city was really anxious to become the one city in the valley where we were user-friendly, we were engaging the growers to see how we can best and effectively make them want to do business in our city. And as a result, $56 million building was brought into our city, the Suniva building. Right. And that's pretty revolutionary because they could have gone anywhere else in the valley, and that they settled here. So it's pretty exciting.
Well, and in fact, you helped diversify the economy in Cathedral City.
Yeah, it's really interesting because our intent was to just grow the economy in a time when there wasn't a great deal of growth outside of tourism. And the majority of our tourism is happening in Palm Springs, but of course we do a lot, the spillover here, which is to our benefit. And then, of course, with Chris Parman bringing in the events that we had the great benefit of doing, that also brought in tourism. But having cannabis and having it done so effectively, really, we became the focus of other cities in the valley wanting to know how we did it and how they wanted to do it like us. We were well written up in the cannabis industry portfolios, and the press was very kind to us. And it really, and obviously, as a result of $21 million in rainy day funds, you mentioned the COVID this past year in balancing the budget. The city council used about $4 million of that money to keep our fire and police employed, because public safety can't be compromised. So this was a real benefit here.
Yeah. You also brought the Rainbow Crossing to Cathedral City as chair of the Public Arts Commission.
Well, what happened was that 6-7 years ago when I first applied to be, Jim Cox was the chair at the time, and I told him it's something that I had a passion for, noticing that it's, throughout the cities, throughout the world, there are rainbow crossings as a tribute to the LGBTQ community. And I was surprised that Palm Springs didn't do that because it's obviously a gay resort. So I said, let's our city be the first city to do it. And
yeah, but remember, you weren't here yet, but Cathedral City is where all the bars and the hotels were.
That is true.
Palm Springs didn't have anything, and that was where all the nightlife and all the really great resort hotels were.
Which is interesting because if there was ever a time for them to have a rainbow crossing, it would have been
back then.
That area, that time where people would fly into Palm Springs, as you just mentioned, to come to Palm Springs because that's where the airport was, and they would stay in Palm Springs, but they would party in Cathedral City because all the gay bars were here downtown. Yeah. You're right about that. And so that. I moved it forward, and we had, of course, an amazing progressive LGBTQ community on council, plus the support of the community. And I was just so thrilled and excited that I was part of that process of moving it forward.
Yeah, well, and also you were very active in advancing the Cathedral City's Art and Entertainment District, which is basically the downtown core.
When the city brought the new City Hall convention set, the City Hall building in, and it was a beautiful building, still is a beautiful building. Their intent was to make the downtown an entertainment center, and they did have the Mary Pickford come in, which was a perfect marriage. They also had the IMAX theater, which was at the time a wonderful idea, but then as time progressed, people weren't as much into the IMAX, so they decided, well, the city is responsible for that building. What can we do? Well, the genius behind the CB rep, who was in Rancho Mirage at the time on very limited space, approached the city to say, we would like that building for the theater. And now we have live theater at the CB Rep, which was where the old IMAX was.
Which is genius. Ron Salona is such a great maverick when it comes to arts. He's so talented. And the great thing about what they did there is they had to build that stage from the ground up. They had to retrofit it. And then because he had been a dancer before, they put in a wood floor that was perfect for dancers that had a little bit of give in it.
Phenomenal. We are so blessed. The CV Rep always had a great reputation of bringing live theater, reputable, really strong union theater from Los Angeles and other cities into our valley. But they were very limited in their space. They were in an old strip mall. But when this happened, it was the most perfect situation for the city and for the CB Rep. As you mentioned, they had to rebuild. It was not what they intended to do, but because the IMAX was originally just designed to project images on a wall, a large wall, there was never a need for a stage per se. So in order for them to fulfill the needs that they required, and the other problem they had is that the ceiling wasn't structured strong enough to handle lights and a grid.
Right.
So they had to come up with an entire infrastructure, a skeletal structure that was built inside the building.
Amazing.
So,
we're talking about the CV Rep Playhouse. We're also talking with Alan Carvalho. He is a Cathedral City resident, and we'll talk more about his role in the city of Cathedral City. You're listening to The Jeff Hocker Show on iHub Radio.
Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. The Jeff Hocker Show, casting a brilliant rainbow of diversity on iHub Radio. Now, here's Jeff.
Speaking of first
responders,
that's the word. The Palm Springs Police Department is doing an LGBTQ plus outreach committee virtual town hall meeting that's coming up Tuesday, March 30th at 5:30. And if you go to the Brothers of the Desert on Facebook and like it, it'll send you a reminder. So check that out. We're talking with Alan Carvalho with the city. Well, you don't work for the city of Cathedral City, but I always think of you as working for the city because you do so much.
Well, thank you. I still am active involved. My dear friend Sue Townsley is now the chair of the public arts, and she and I work very closely together. We did when I was chair, and I try to help her every time. Matter of fact, this morning we had a Zoom meeting we have an app in our city called Where Art Lives, and I worked with the company that puts this template together, and it's a place where people can actually go to see the type of art we have throughout our city. And we had a meeting because they're updating some of the way it's going to be received. So we're always working together. So I feel good.
The app is current.
It's current. It's called it's Cathedral City Where Art Lives, and it's free on your iPhone as well as on the Android format.
How great is that? We just last weekend we did the Desert X. And it's just so gratifying to go to these locations and seeing how inspired these artists are to do these installations. And it's the same with public art. You know, these are people who've worked their whole life to have something visible for all people to enjoy.
The one thing, as I said when we first moved here, is everything we do in the city and what you do with your company, it has to be advertised. People have to know that it's happening. So when you have an app, which of course is the best way, young people are now using apps more than they are the internet. So we created this where you can go to this app and you can even have the GPS coordinates as you're driving. It'll tell you and speak to you about certain art exhibits and installations that we have put in, and let you know that you're several miles or a mile or half a mile away on your right side, and it just literally talks to you. And we have some of it has videos that go with it that explain the artwork as well. It's both in English and Spanish, so it's happening throughout the valley. I'm seeing more and more cities that are using apps as a way to advertise the best way to kind of help tourism. It was really one of the better things that we did together, which was great.
Yeah, one of the final topics I wanted to talk with you about was the short-term vacation rentals. Have they done the full counting of all the ballots yet?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, 2 days ago, the supervisors had a meeting, which I sat in on, and we were hoping, because I was an advocate for short-term vacation rentals. I was the only candidate running this past year, that was in favor. And unfortunately, when the supervisors were there to certify, they decided to go ahead and certify, in spite of the fact that 11,000 voters didn't get their ballots in time. The vote was last Tuesday, and it was last Friday that some of the people didn't get their mail-in ballots. So it really was an unfortunate situation. I don't think it's over yet, Jeff. I'll tell you why. Tourism depends very much on places for people to stay, and there aren't enough hotel spaces in Cathedral City. And, of course, Palm Springs does allow short-term vacation rentals, and all that's going to do is just give them more business. So I'm hoping that cannabis was resisted here. So was fireworks. They wanted fireworks, and we went against it. And eventually the council comes to its senses and realizes that it's in the best interest of the community. So I think they'll change their mind. I think there'll be a change.
Well, and here's my take on it, is that if you do it right and you hire people to go around and make sure people are following the regulations, it only helps homeowners to take pride in their properties and make sure that they're taken care of. And it brings in people that wouldn't normally come to the city because they're staying at a property that is unique.
Especially during COVID, people are concerned about it. For a long time, the hotels weren't even open. But if they are, you're thinking about all the public spaces that hotels have, the common areas, and all those spaces have to constantly be sprayed and disinfected. So when you have a home that is required also to be cleaned between guests, the people feel that there's an intimacy about staying in a short-term vacation rental. And as you mentioned, Palm Springs hired an expert, like Cathedral City did when we got cannabis in. You hire an expert to give you advice on how to do it right, and they're doing it right. $7 million annually is brought into Palm Springs through short-term vacation rentals. We could do that too, and I do think I'm feeling very confident that eventually we'll come around to that.
I think so too. And it's created a new generation of families who want to travel together, because they rent a house, they all get to hang out at the pool together. It's much more intimate. You get to know each other better than if you're just staying in different rooms in different parts of the hotel.
You're right. It's really instills a sense of a family reunion. I know a friend of mine that runs one in Palm Springs, and I've helped him when he needed it. People will fly from all over. We had a family come in from Chicago, another family from L.A., from Boston, from Atlanta. They all decided to stay in this wonderful home, and it's now a tradition. Annually, they have this family reunion, and because of the fact that they've got an entire backyard and a pool and lots of space for the kids. It's more of a homey experience for people. It makes them feel that they're already living here. And many a times they will eventually buy because they like our area. They love it as much as we do.
That's what happened to me. That's why I'm here.
Bingo. Perfect example.
Was there an estimate on the revenue that it brings in for the city of Cathedral City?
The last year, when it was legal, and it still is legal, it's a phase out that won't happen for another year and a half. Last year, they brought in $700,000. There's a lot more revenue that will be had this year because there's a lot more short-term vacation rentals in the city. So, during COVID, when there's been a real desperation to raise revenue for taxes, it seemed kind of strange to me that of all the times for our city council to decide against vacation rentals, why not delay it? Put it off until COVID's over.
Right.
Allow it to happen for the next couple of years until we're back to normal, where we can then afford to say no to a revenue stream that is a consistent revenue stream. It's going to happen. I'm telling you, it's going to eventually come around with the young people coming in. They're Uber types. They don't want to own property necessarily. They just want to have a place that they feel is their own. That's their mentality. That's why Ubers are so popular. Instead of renting a car, you just use the car when you need it.
Yep.
You need a house. You rent it when you need it.
Well, and then you don't even have to buy gas.
No, you just, it's there whenever you need it. You don't have to worry about getting stolen. You don't have to worry about insuring it. You don't, all that extra expense is avoided. So this is the mentality.
Well, Alan,
and I think yes.
We are going to get cut off. It is great to have you on the show today. We will have you back soon. We'll talk about things that are going on in the future for you.
Thank you, Jeff.
My pleasure.
Really enjoyed this.
You're listening to The Jeff Hocker Show on iHub Radio. For more information on all the programs, go to iHubRadio.com.